Let's talk wetsuits. This is one of my old racing wetsuits, and this is what a wetsuit, a modern triathlon swimming wetsuit, looks like. You've got the arms, legs, don't get those mixed up, the torso, front of the wetsuit, and the back of the wetsuit. This particular wetsuit, you get into it by zipping it down, and you make it fit tightly by zipping it up, and then you've got a nice closure system at the top to make the neck a nice, comfortable but not too tight fit. Some wetsuits have the opposite, that you actually get out of them by pulling the zip up, but both of them have this really handy long piece of cord, so that if you're doing triathlon, you're going into T1, then you're able to run along, grab the cord behind you and actually pull it down or up depending on the design of the wetsuit. So a couple of things to think about on a wetsuit when you're buying one. Different types of construction. So you can see here there's a top piece that goes around the shoulder, there's then various side panels and different construction around the waist and down to the legs. The shoulders and the arms have a thinner neoprene to give you a better range of movement and a bit of comfort around the motion of swimming. Once you get onto the torso and the legs, the neoprene is thicker for a couple of reasons: to insulate your main areas, but also to give you a bit of buoyancy as well. There's a couple of things about using and storing a wetsuit that are worth talking about. In order to get it on, you're going to have to pull it up, and I'll show you how to do that later. But if you're not careful and you've got long fingernails, then you'll see on this wetsuit that you can actually dig into the wetsuit. And this is actually a combination of wear and tear, using this wetsuit a lot, but also over the years just pulling and grabbing at it, and it just causing a few rips. It's not a major issue. It just means that you'll get a bit of water into the wetsuit, and you know, not something you might want to experience. You can also repair these wetsuits. You can get wetsuit repair kits, neoprene repair kits, and also small gashes you can repair. You can see on this wetsuit there's lots of different repairs along the side, along the body panels and things like that. So yeah, over the years, a certain amount of maintenance you're going to need to do on your wetsuit. The other thing I wanted to point out on this wetsuit is what's happened at the shoulders. I've used this wetsuit a lot, and you can see there's a fair amount of wear and tear on the shoulders. But also what's relevant is thinking about how you store a wetsuit. Once you've finished using it, wash it in clean water, rinse it through in clean water, get any gunk off it that's accumulated. And then what you want to do is make sure it's dry, lay it down flat, and roll it up and store it in the bag that it comes in. What I actually did with this wetsuit on a number of occasions is stick it in a cupboard on a hanger, and what it's done is just added to this kind of wearing thin at the shoulder. So that's one of the lessons I've learned about wetsuit. Wash it, make sure it's dry, roll it up, or store it flat if you've got the space. So that's a basic wetsuit. What I wanted to talk about now is what you actually wear underneath your wetsuit. We've looked at the basic construction of a wetsuit, and there are various choices that you can make. You can just wear your swimming costume, whether that's trunks or shorts or just a swimming costume. Fine. If you're racing, you'll need to wear a tri-suit, and that'll need to be regulation. This is my old GB suit. So one of the key things here is to make sure it's fitting properly underneath the wetsuit. If it's all scrunched up, if the legs are all rolled up underneath your wetsuit, it's going to feel quite uncomfortable. Not a big issue if you're doing 15 or 20 minutes in a sprint, or if you're doing half an hour or so in a standard distance triathlon. But if you're in for 3.8k, that kind of is going to rub, so you need to make that right. if you're not doing a triathlon, you're doing a marathon swim and you're using a tri-suit, then yeah, it needs to be perfectly fitted, otherwise it's going to cause you problems over 6, 10, 14, 20 hours, however long you're swimming. Lots of different types of tri-suits. This one's got a back opening, some tri-suits have front opening, and also the way to get out of this tri-suit is actually to pull up rather than pull down. So that's a tri-suit if you're wearing a tri-suit. If you're not wearing a tri-suit and you're worried about rubbing, the other option is to wear a rash vest. This is a surfing rash vest. Basically it's got a high collar, but it's not really designed for a swimming wetsuit. It's designed for a surfing wetsuit. But what's good about this is it's tight fitting, it's thin material, gives you a certain amount of insulation. It certainly does stop rubbing. Just make sure that it fits you and it fits properly under the wetsuit. The last thing you want is it to bunch up under the wetsuit and cause you discomfort and cause you rubbing. When I swam the length of Windermere, I had this rash vest on. When I did Dark 10K, I had this rash vest on as well. Not that it saved me from the cold, but it just gave me an added level of comfort. If it's really cold, there are some other options. I suffer from the cold a lot. It's one of the reasons I wear a wetsuit. A lot of you swimmers won't. You'll be comfortable or you'll acclimatise into cold water. I haven't, and I don't want to. I just want to swim, so I tend to wear a little bit more insulation. The added insulation I had when I swam Windermere was a thin additional neoprene vest. So I had my rash vest on and I had this underneath. Pretty thin, but really good at insulating. So no arms on this, just a basic bit of kit, sticky on the inside, sort of shiny on the outside. And again, the key here is just make sure you get the right fit, and on the day when you're actually swimming that it's fitted correctly underneath your wetsuit. So take time to make sure that it's all flat and it's fitting correctly around the collar, around the arms and around the waist. Otherwise you're going to be swimming for 10 hours on something that feels horrible and uncomfortable. And if it's really cold, as well as your swim cap and your goggles, you can actually have a neoprene hat as well. Yeah, I'd recommend this. I wore this again when I was swimming Windermere, and I'd recommend it if you're doing a long swim in cold water and you've chose to wear a wetsuit. So I've talked about a rash vest if you want to wear that, and how to make sure that's going to be comfortable in your swimming. We've also talked about a thin neoprene undervest and also a neoprene cap. Again, if it's really cold, you can wear neoprene gloves, which are great. I don't think you get much advantage in wearing these from a swimming point of view, but you certainly do from a resisting the cold point of view. And again, this is all about protecting your extremities. You can get these neoprene boots as well. So kitted out entirely, you'd have that sort of thin neoprene undervest, you'd have your cap, you'd have your gloves, you'd have your shoes, and then you'd have your wetsuit on top, and that should give you protection to all sorts of degrees of temperature. I will show you how to get into and get out of a wetsuit. But before I do that, there's just a couple of little things to bear in mind. A modern wetsuit shouldn't be a problem in terms of rubbing. You need to go and select your wetsuit for your price range, but also to make sure it's the best possible fit it can be. Now, the longer you're going to be swimming, the more important that gets. So if you're in the water for 10 minutes or in the water for half an hour, then maybe you can put up with a bit of rubbing. But if you're doing Windermere and you're doing 5, 6, 10 hours, whatever it is, you're going across the channel, it's taking you 10, 15, 18 hours, whatever it is, it's a really important feature. So make sure it's a good fit. Rubbing shouldn't be a problem. But also, modern wetsuits have a couple of features that are really helpful. This is my current racing wetsuit. It's my favourite wetsuit at the moment. Fantastic suit from Zone 3. At the ends of the cuffs, for the arms and the legs, there's a different type of material. Now, this still gives you a seal, but it's not quite as elastic, it's not quite as tight. So it gives you just a few inches that are easier to get on and to get off, and I find that really, really helpful. What I don't want to be doing in T1 or at the end of a swim is struggling to get my wetsuit off. I just want to get it off, get on the bike, or get it off and get dry and stop shivering, which is normally what I'll be doing. So yeah, on this wetsuit you can see at the end of the arms and at the end of the legs there's this nice material which is less floppy. So rubbing shouldn't be an issue. But if it is, there are a couple of things that you can do. Just make sure it's fitted properly. This has got a great closure around the neck. It's got lots of protection, so make sure that is all flat and it's all nicely fitted and it's nicely tight but not too tight. I'll show you later about pulling bits of the wetsuit up. There's lots of slack in a wetsuit to get it fitted properly. So do that, but if you still find that rubbing is a problem during training, there's a couple of things that you can do. You can buy proprietary wetsuit lubricant, so for around your neck and your arms and your legs, just to stop that little bit of rubbing. What I actually do is I actually use baby oil, and this has got added aloe vera, which is quite nice. So I just squeeze a little bit around the neck if I'm finding some rubbing, a little bit around the arms, around the cuffs, and around the ankles for the legs as well. But to tell you the truth, I try not to use it. I try to just make sure that my wetsuit is fitting properly. But yeah, I find that baby oil is ideal. Don't use Vaseline because it actually rots the neoprene in your wetsuit as well. So yeah, that's a few little introductory remarks before we actually get on to fitting the wetsuit.